Violence against women and girls is one of the most widespread, persistent, and devastating human rights violations in our world today and remains largely unreported due to the impunity, silence, stigma, and shame surrounding it. According to the United Nations, almost 1 in 3 of 736 million women have been subjected to physical and/or sexual intimate partner violence, non-partner sexual violence, or both, at least once in their lives. Now, that's why International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women is celebrated every year on November 25th. The date marks the launch of the Unite campaign, an initiative of 16 days of activism, including concluding on the day that commemorates the International Human Rights Day. That's on December 10th. The 2023 campaign, Invest to Prevent Violence Against Girls and Women, calls on citizens to show how much they care about ending violence against women and girls, and calls on the government worldwide to share how they're investing in gender-based violence prevention. And of course, human rights lawyer Mary Ogwiji joins me to discuss further on this. Thank you so much for your time, Mary. All right, Mary, let's get straight to it. What factors do you think contribute to the high incidence of gender-based violence, particularly against African women, compared to the global average?
Okay, there are actually a lot of factors that contribute to gender-based violence in Africa, and it's actually not unconnected to the way we live our lives in Africa and the nature of Africa itself. We talk about our cultural backgrounds, we'll talk about our religion, we talk about patriarchy. Patriarchy, I know, yes, it's not just an African problem, but it's more prevalent in Africa. And we also talk about our legislations, especially using Nigeria as a case study. And if I decide to pick on the legislation, for example, Section 55, Sub 1D of our Penal Code actually permits a man to beat up his wife as far as he's not destroying any major, as far as it's not doing grievous bodily harm, that is not destroying any major part of her body. So if you have those kind of legislations that actually put a man in that actually make a woman look like a property, then definitely you would have gender-based violence at a very, very high rate. Then we talk about other legislations that make a woman feel as if she's a second-class citizen of Nigeria. For example, when we talk about women, like married women cannot actually give their citizenship to their spouses just by marrying them. And meanwhile, any man that marries a foreigner, actually the foreigner takes up that status and can be called a Nigerian citizen. Then even when we talk about our Marriage Act, a woman cannot be allowed to sign for her child that is not up to 21 that is getting married under the Marriage Act. So those kind of legislations, actually make a woman feel like a second-place or second-class citizen in the country. And when we talk about patriarchy, Nigeria is highly, is the society, and Africa at large is a society that practices patriarchy, and that's men-dominated society. So it's almost like the woman follows and then the man leads. So in that kind of society, you will see that a lot of women will actually be subjected because the men would want to actually domineer, whether it has to be forcefully or not forcefully. Then we talk about religion. Our religion tells the woman be submissive to the man, whatever the man does, like he's almost right and everything. So those kind of religious teachings actually influence violence. So sometimes you see some women even being beaten,
Mary,
almost dying.
You've highlighted quite a number of, what I call it, firecracking issues right now. You stated some sections of the law that in a way sort of empowers or of course, encourages some of this very, very sad and very, very disturbing behavior. What do you think has been the blockade in actually reviewing some of these provisions of the law, over time?
Okay, to review these provisions of the law, definitely, for example, the law is not in Father Christmas. So whatever you take to the court, for example, they will have to use the laws that are already stated in acts and other legislations in order to decide those cases. But notwithstanding, the Constitution is our ground norm, and the Constitution is against discrimination, the Constitution is against inhuman torture, and a lot of things, like if you see the genital mutilation of women, and if you see genital mutilation of women, and also that section 55 sub 1D actually contravenes what the Constitution says, that's under chapter 4, that's of human rights. So if we actually decide to go by that, then I feel like the courts have a good chance of making sure that the perpetrators of this act are given maximum punishment, which will actually deter other people from going that route. And also our legislators should actually, I don't know why we have legislators and they'll be finding it difficult to expunge laws such as section 55 sub 1D. A lot of civil rights activists have been speaking out. A lot of civil society organizations, NGOs have been speaking out. A lot of women have been speaking out. Women are not chattels. So I don't know why it's so difficult to get that law expunged from the penal code, because it's very inhuman and it contravenes the Constitution. So I believe that in order for us to move forward here, we need to speak to our legislators to change the law, because it's the law that the judiciary would use to decide its cases.
Now, I mean, let's talk about the role of law enforcement, and particularly the judiciary right now. We know that in Lagos State, for instance, there is a special, well, I call it a justice system that addresses domestic violence. What efforts or what role do you think law enforcement can play, and also the judiciary, in sort of tackling issues like this?
Okay, I think especially the problem will start first with the law enforcement agents, because when you have a victim of gender-based violence, they first meet the police. And one of the things that the police do is that some of the police, like from reports, like from first-hand information from persons that have actually encountered this, you will see that they are being mocked, or they are being maimed. And you see, anybody that is suffering that kind of violence and knowing that there's no safe space for you to come and report without being in a way mocked, would actually be discouraged from coming out to speak. So I think first and foremost, the police, that is the anchor point, the first person you meet when a crime is being committed, should actually be trained and should be educated properly on how to handle cases of gender-based violence, because they are really delicate cases, and they should actually tell them the right things to do. For example, if it's an incident of rape.
Mary, I'm sorry, at this point I'd have to interject. I sincerely apologize. We're pressed for time. Hopefully we'll get to have this conversation some other time, but thank you so much for making our time to be on the news.
Thank you for having me.